Welcome, everyone, to Klever Live. And what a time to be alive. Just over the past 24 hours alone, there has been more exciting and mind blowing news and developments in the crypto space than we've seen sometimes in half a year of this entire space. Bitfinex and DOJ. So, the biggest seizure in US history just happened yesterday with $3.6 billion seized by the Department of Justice in the United States related to the Bitfinex 2016 hack. And the two suspects who've been arrested are, let's just call them two characters, Heather Morgan and Ilya Lichtenstein. They're perhaps not the usual suspects in terms of hacking, but it's definitely a developing story and it's super fascinating. Meanwhile, Russia and the Kremlin has come out and announced that they're going to recognize Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies as currencies, which is one of the absolute greatest, I would say, monumental developments in crypto in terms of adoption on the national level. And there's been so much more. Apple Pay is going to enable tap to pay feature for digital wallets and cryptocurrencies. And we have a guest today to discuss all of this and everything else that's happening in the space. He is a world-renowned market analyst and frequently cited in financial media such as Bloomberg, Forbes, Wall Street Journal, Reuters, CNBC, Yahoo Finance, is often interviewed on TV, radio, and podcasts worldwide. Mati Greenspan is his name. He's the not the co-founder, he's the founder and CEO of Quantum Economics and has co-authored the book The Complete Guide to FinTech, Trading, and Investments, and is a contributor to Business Insider, Investing.com, Hack.com, and more. He was formerly the senior market analyst at the global trading giant eToro. My friend and a legend in the space, Mati, welcome to the show.
Yeah. How's it going, man? Elevator. Bye.
Pretty good, pretty good.
Bye.
How are you and all?
Good.
Welcome, not only
With us as well, as you can tell.
to all.
He refused to go to bed, so he's gonna hang out.
It's all good.
The junior analyst right here. There we go.
מה קורה, אור? כל טוב?
Say hi to Misha.
So it's quite interesting, guys. First of all, thank you everybody for joining. We're live across the space on YouTube, Twitter, and many other platforms. We actually scheduled this. Currently, it's almost midnight here in Israel. Both me and Maddie are out here. We scheduled this in order not to have our children come in, but God plays tricks with all of us, no?
That's what having kids is like, man. Got 3 kids and 3 companies and 1 on the way, so it's always there's never a dull day in crypto. There's never a dull day in my house either.
Mazel tov on the one on the way. Congratulations. So before we jump into the developments in the market, the macroeconomic trends that we're seeing, and everything else that's happening, not only in the legacy finance world, but also, of course, in crypto, let's talk a little bit more about you. Tell us a little bit more about yourself, your journey, especially not only your origins, but your journey through the financial world to crypto and where you are today, and how did it all begin?
Sure. And hi to everybody on the chat. I'm watching people coming in and saying what's up. Yeah, sure. So my name is Mati Greenspan. As you mentioned, I'm the founder and CEO of Quantum Economics. I'm a licensed trader in the European Union and former senior market analyst at eToro. Quantum Economics has about 30 analysts on the team, covering each individual area of the blockchain space. So, when I got into Bitcoin in 2013, it was pretty easy. Just, put Bitcoin on the watch list next to gold and crude oil and analyze it with the rest of the markets. But, now it's so diversified that we need a dedicated person for NFTs, a dedicated person for stable coins, GameFi, play to earn, all of these type of niche industries need monitoring and that's and research, and that's what we do.
Yeah, that is quantum economics. I'm friends and acquaintance with numerous of your analysts. Some of them are fantastic. Alexander Lorne, super passionate. We've had a Twitter Spaces with him. We were supposed to do 1 hour. It was, I think, 2 hours and 36 minutes, and we decided to cut off. Of course, Matty Stats, and yeah, you get some interesting characters on the team.
For sure, for sure.
But a little bit more on the origin journey. Your grandfather, as I've understood, influenced you a lot early on the financial and investment side, and kind of how did your journey as a senior market analyst on eToro as well lead you into understanding that Bitcoin and crypto is where it's at?
Yeah, sure. So my grandfather's he's a self-made billionaire, rags to riches. He's jumped from many different industries. Obviously, he doesn't understand or believe in crypto the way that we do. But he gets his information a lot from his bank and his bankers, and the analysts that feed him information. And since they don't offer crypto, obviously they're not going to talk it up. And we know those dinosaurs will soon be extinct. And they have been changing their tune, certainly somewhat. I don't know. It just growing up in that kind of environment, you kind of soak things up. Little tips and tricks about financial markets, how to trade, and how the big market works in harmony with all of its multiple millions of participants, and how to understand, how to think about different transactions, negotiations, and think about the interests of all parties. That's good for both trading and just being an entrepreneur in general. Um, I remember when I told my grandfather that I wanted to be, involved in the financial markets when I was very young, and he goes, "Well, you should buy GM." And I'm like, "What's GM?" He's like, "Well, they just fired their CEO, and the stock price is down." I'm like, "The stock price is down. Why do I want to buy it?" Right? Like, well, because it'll go back up. GM's a good company, and you take advantage of those type of things. Those are the type of like little lessons you learn at the dinner table and stuff like that, and then just being involved. Bitcoin, I got into it in 2013. Full credit goes to the CEO and founder of eToro, Yoni Asia, who gave me my first Bitcoin when it was at $30 a piece. And as
30 bucks, 30 bucks in 2013. Yoni Asia gifted you your first Bitcoin.
that's correct. Yeah, yeah.
Nice
Uh,
gift.
it was, it
It
was.
wasn't a nice gift at the time, perhaps, but it was a good thought, and now it's a beautiful gift.
I thought it was a great gesture. I was a bit disappointed when it came out as 0.9999995 because of the transaction fee. I wanted a whole one, but that's how things go, I suppose. Shortly after that, I learned about XRP. They sent in some of their executives to eToro to give us a talk, and they told us all about the Ripple coin at the time it was called, and how they were um, creating a network for payments, and it obviously had transformed a lot since they first came in and gifted me 1,000 of their coin. Um, but you know, hold on just a second.
אור,
Sorry.
אור, מה עם הבמבה? אתה לא רוצה לאכול במבה ולהיות קצת בשקט? Well, this is the time of Corona, and our families are closer to us than ever. So that's the clever way, as Isabella say. We have to We have to be able to take in our kids as well. This is what happens. It's a beautiful thing, and sometimes it's a little bit disrupting, but it doesn't really matter because in the end, the Klever family is here, and everybody is. I hope at least you've liked this video, you've shared this video, and you comment below. And before we continue, and Matty hopefully comes back either with Or in his bed or has come back to sit in Matty's lap, comment with the flag of your origin. Which nation are you from? And let's see how many flags we can get up. Just comment on YouTube, comment on Twitter, comment on Facebook, comment on LinkedIn. Doesn't matter which platform, just comment the flag that you are currently residing in the nation. Oh, I see America. And we might even have, oh, Tajikistan. There we go.
All right. My wife is on it. I can't promise no. I can't promise anything on the background noise, and I do apologize about that.
It's all good. It's what Corona has done to all of us. And Mars doesn't have a flag yet, that's for sure, Red Room. But I see a lot of amazing flags here. I didn't know that we have people from Tajikistan tuning in, but that's pretty amazing. I know, Rieger, that you're in Spain, although you should probably go back to Brazil. But let's continue, Maddie. I hope Ore is fine.
Yeah, I saw somebody wanted us to list Klever on eToro. I don't work for eToro anymore. And even when I did, my powers of actually listing coins there were quite limited. I would usually just go up to the head of trading and say, "Hey, could you list this?" And he's like, "We're on it, man." And then I'd either see it or not see it.
Well, we will get to eToro in due time. There's no doubt about that.
Sure,
Uh,
I can tell you quite pointedly, they only list top liquid coins because uh, their thing is that the trading always needs to be open, right? Since they're trading rather than peer to peer like most exchanges, they actually guarantee liquidity on the assets that you're trading. So if you press buy, they want to be able to fill the order, and if they can't fill the order, then they won't. They just the buy button goes blank and it goes gray, and nobody can buy, and it's a terrible user experience. So that's why they always want to make sure that they have a good supply, that they can always get more if they need it.
and speaking of liquidity, Tesla tried last year, as Elon said, they tested the liquidity. Um, You coming from traditional financial markets, how do you see the liquidity on Bitcoin and other major currencies, and how easy it is to enter and exit now compared to early days, 2013, 2014, 15, when you started out?
Yeah, sure. So I certainly haven't placed any orders as large as Tesla. Um, so when they say they're testing the liquidity, and we also heard a very interesting statement from Larry Fink of BlackRock, who was on a live stream, very candid with Mark Carney, who is a very famous central banker. And Larry was saying, and Larry Fink he's the CEO of BlackRock, is probably one of the
Just so
largest.
everybody knows what BlackRock is, it's the largest asset manager in the entire world with over $8 trillion under management. So they're a pretty big player.
Yeah, and he was telling Carney how even with a small amount of money you can move the price. I think that's kind of what we're talking about when you ask me about liquidity. Uh, so for myself, I've never been able to kind of move the price of Bitcoin, with a single order. I had done it on several shitcoins before, which is always fun to watch. You place the order and then you see the
It's
price
an
moving
amazing
across
feeling. You just
platforms. Yeah, and some of some of these shitcoins that have very low volume, very low liquidity, even an order of a few $1,000s can do that. Um, So I wouldn't be able to necessarily speak to Bitcoin's liquidity and how that might compare because I've never traded on that level with that coin. Um, I would say though that the longer we go, the less volatile Bitcoin becomes, and that's both because there's more players in the market, but also um, those players tend to be less speculative over time. And I believe that eventually Bitcoin will be even much more stable than the US dollar or any other fiat currency. And we already see it, kind of happening in the stock market. We saw Facebook plunge like 25% in a single day.
It's
And,
beautiful.
those of us out on crypto Twitter going, wait, what's volatile over here? What's too volatile for you? So I would say that there's always going to be shit coins and there's always going to be illiquid markets. But over time, we've seen that the cryptocurrency blue chips have been rising in the amount of liquidity that's able to come from the market. But Bitcoin being unique in that there's only 21 million that will ever be produced, you get digital scarcity, and when you get to a situation where price is going up and it's expected to go up, you get to these places where nobody wants to sell, right? And everybody's buying and nobody's selling, and that's
Supply
when
crunch.
yes, liquidity crunch. And that does happen. That's always happened in Bitcoin, has been responsible for all of the major, very sudden moves that we've seen um, in this unique asset class. Uh, I don't believe that people will continue to think that it's going to go up forever. I mean, it gets to a point where people say, okay, well, this is overbought or oversold, and especially on the short term, and we can see it now. Um, I'm fortunate enough to have been forecasting quite accurately the massive range that we've been seeing between 30K and 60K. It's something that we've been monitoring uh, for a year now almost. And when we were up at 65K, I'm like, people, we can get back to 32, and people were like it was amazing. Some of the replies that I got on that tweet, like, you're tripping balls, man, or you're insane. It's not possible. And then I retweeted that when we got to 32. I'm like, and I started retweeting the replies too. Yeah, I'm tripping balls. I just been in the markets longer and know that things go up and things go down. They don't. It's not unilateral.
Yeah, it's a breathing organism, and it's quite astonishing to see, but also to hear, of course, what you're saying, that eventually Bitcoin will become more stable than the US dollar. And I want to tap into a little bit more on that statement, exactly what you mean. Do you mean essentially that Bitcoin's stability in its rise will become so predictable in terms of cycles over years, while the stagnation of the US dollar and the decline of the US dollar becomes as predictable and continues to fall in purchasing power?
So, and again, apologies for the noise in the background, but I believe that a large part of why we see these meteoric uh, price rises is due to the adoption curve. That people are, it's basically it's user inflation, and it's the same thing that we see in some of the smaller cap currencies, where you get to a situation where even if the token economic model is bad, you can still see meteoric rises in the price simply because there's so many people coming into the network. And I believe that once Bitcoin, the market for Bitcoin is saturated, meaning that everybody who's got wealth is holding it and is interested in holding it, storing it long term, and open to an asset like Bitcoin is holding it in Bitcoin. then where's the buying pressure going to come from? Right? If everybody's got as much as they need or as much as they want, um, then you don't have the same supply and demand dilemma. It's just kind of the same as U.S. dollars. They're so liquid right now that if anybody needs them, they can always get them. And as they become uh, as they're born, they're directly into kind of ownership. And I think that it'll be the same with Bitcoin over time, that everybody's already on the network, so we don't see that massive surge in user growth anymore.
I mean, how many people are in Bitcoin now? I think last year, Crypto.com did a survey of 114 million people hold Bitcoin. I'm sure that that has risen quite significantly, maybe 150 million currently, but we still have a huge amount of people still waiting to adopt Bitcoin. And so let's move over to adoption. Russia has today revealed their legislative plans to recognize Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies as currencies. I think February 18th will be the day when they actually uh, start discussing this legislative proposal. But this is Russia, right? It's a completely different authoritarian regime. It's a lot more efficient to get through legislation in the Kremlin and the Duma compared to Washington or any other democratic regime. So I believe that it will be quite quickly once Putin has decided that this is going to be a currency. It will be a currency, but at the same time, we're seeing India regulating crypto with a 30% tax, and more countries are edging closer to regulatory clarity around digital assets all the time. How do you see the macroeconomic and geopolitical implications of these moves? And of course, what does it do for Bitcoin?
Yeah, so Russia's not surprising to me. And I've been in touch with a well-known professor there who's been an advocate of Bitcoin within the country and for many years. And he's been telling me that Russia's going this way since 2017. In fact, I had a bet with somebody online. I'm going to have to look this up at this point. I don't remember the time frame of the bet, but it was my thesis that Russia would be adding Bitcoin to their central bank
Balance sheet.
reserves within short order. And we always knew that Putin himself is I remember the first time it was in the news that Putin called Vitalik over aside for a very private meeting that was like way back when. So obviously, I mean, and Vitalik actually kind of leaked the bullet points of that conversation, saying that Putin was interested and happy with cryptocurrency and trying to figure out how he could use it to his advantage. We know that Putin was watching with great interest when Venezuela launched the Petra, which was the world's first central bank digital currency. And that digital ruble has always been something that Russia has been interested in. So this is not, even though it's not a surprise, it is extremely good news because they could have gone the other way, right? They could have said, okay, well, only digital ruble and everybody else can
They
go
could have
jump.
gone the China route.
Yes, they certainly could have, and we know that Russia and China are extremely friendly. Even they even had a meeting. I believe it was like today or yesterday. We saw pictures of Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin together shortly after his meeting with France across the long table that we all saw on social media. Um, so no doubt he has pressure from China, but I wouldn't be surprised if he's now sending the pressure back the other way and going, "Hey, Xi, what's up? Lighten up on Bitcoin a bit because we need this." Um,
Yeah, do you really think it's viable to revert that kind of decision where they literally kicked out 65% of the mining power essentially from China? You think that they can just go back and say, you know what, yeah, we'll accept Bitcoin in our country alongside our digital yuan.
Well, in communist countries and generally in dictatorships, it's not particularly usually very difficult for a leader to change his mind or
Like we were discussing
make,
about Putin.
but the damage is done, right? Like you said, I mean, there was a grave exodus from China, and our the quantum economics mining operation known as quantum expeditions, and we're kind of watching the fallout from that at the moment, where all of the Chinese are trying to get their machines over to the US and trying to get them plugged in Texas and Oklahoma. And it's kind of funny because, like, the Americans are like, who are you? So we're watching that kind of play out at the moment, but those machines aren't going back to China. Right. And even though they might, if, for example, there might be some kind of change in regulation, it wouldn't, the goodness. Actually, I say the damage is done, but actually it's good because, for a long time, people were criticizing Bitcoin for its, centralization in China and the mining side. So uh, nobody can say that anymore. Nobody can say that it's, controlled by the Chinese government or anything like that. And it has been very positive for Bitcoin's the decentralization of the Bitcoin network.
100%. I think it's probably the largest financial blunder in the history of finance. Will probably be seen the Beijing decision to shut down mining operations and essentially ban Bitcoin for the 13th time. But it seems like the 13th time was the lucky charm. And
Seriously.
yeah,
Uh,
and
it's a lot of revenue that they're giving up on. It's not chump change.
it is, and we're talking about India taxing 30%, right? We have many other countries taxing around 25% on capital gains, but now I had a very interesting talk today with a lawyer here in our country, and uh, not sure if the ramifications are becoming quite clear, but once Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies are recognized as currencies in other countries, they will also become recognized as currencies in many other countries by default, legally through the framework of the judicial system. It's still quite unclear, like all regulatory unclarity around crypto. But uh, for instance, when El Salvador recognizes Bitcoin as legal tender, then suddenly Bitcoin became somewhat of a foreign exchange currency for some countries.
Yeah, and you should know that, and as somebody who holds a financial license from SciSec, regulatory uncertainty is not a new thing. Uh, there's regulatory uncertainty in traditional markets, and I don't know if you're familiar with Basel One, Basel Two, Basel Three. They're always updating and changing things and making things harder for people to move. Always under the auspices of anti-money laundering and terrorism, but it makes it difficult for people to conduct financial transactions. And the famous economist Milton Friedman, I'm not sure if you're familiar with his work. He actually predicted Bitcoin in
Great
19
libertarian.
in 1999. He said there will be a digital currency, a native currency of the internet, and very similar to cash. We'll be able to transact one person to another in the same way that I hand you a $20 bill. And he said when that happens, is going to be a great vehicle for people to avoid paying taxes. Now, um, as a financially licensed person, I do make sure to be meticulous about reporting to the government and things like that. But my belief firmly as a libertarian is that taxation is theft. All taxation is theft, and people want to say, oh, but where will you have roads? Oh, believe me, there are economic models that we can figure out to make sure that the roads are maintained. And for anybody who tries to hide behind that argument, you should know that of the U.S. budget, only 2% goes to maintenance of transportation.
And as a
50%.
fellow libertarian, I do want to say that Austrian economics definitely give the incentives for private companies and individuals to maintain those kind of services.
Oh, it's not even a question. I mean, there's and we see new economic models being born every day. But you know, the government kind of has a monopoly, so so people kind of back off. There's no need for anybody to come up with a new model because people don't see it as broken. But what I see as broken is that the U.S. government, has spent nearly 50% of their budget on making bombs, military spending, and get this, healthcare. Like, yeah,
The
I'm
most
not kidding, man.
broken
25.
healthcare system in the world.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds a bit ridiculous because we know that those same insurance companies that are benefactors of 25% of the U.S. budget are also way overcharging their customers, and I don't really understand why the government is actually handing them money. They should be filthy rich already. Um, and I had a very interesting conversation with Kenneth Bozak, if you know Ken,
Yeah, of
uh,
course. It's
the
hilarious.
the NFT pioneer. I think he's the first one who got into these things. And
He started posting on a daily basis, what NFT am I buying today? And no one was like, "Oh, what are you talking about?
what's an
What the hell is
NFT,
an
right?
NFT?" Yeah.
He's
It's
he's been
like
collecting
2020.
NFTs from before there were cryptocurrencies, no doubt. When I met him, he had a disc on key actually, like in his earring slot. The dude is a visionary, and he says to me, "Look, I'm never gonna. I don't ever want my money being used to bomb somebody else, and therefore I will never, give a dollar to Uncle Sam."
Taxation.
Yeah, and I respect that. Obviously, I can't abide by it because because of my license and everything like that. But and for all of John McAfee's crazy ramblings, that is the one sentence that I took from him that'll stay with me forever, which is that the
Taxation is
taxation
theft.
is theft.
Yeah, I had the honor of doing two interviews with him prior to his death, and the beyond
Alleged
the
death. We still haven't confirmed.
let's just say to prior to his demise, let's say, uh, he besides his fervor and his energy, for the values that he stands for and the guns that he loves and his wife, of course, Janice. But it was so much about the government not being able to go into your pocket. And speaking of the government, and of course, quantum economics, comes from, closely related to quantitative easing, which is essentially the money printing of today. Central banks pushing out dollar bills or shekels or kroner or any other currency. Today, we're seeing rampant inflation across the board in highly developed countries. US is around 7% officially now. Argentina, 50%. Turkey, 48%. Brazil, 10%. Russia, 8%. The list goes on. India, 7%. How can Bitcoin and crypto become a tool to ward off inflation moving forward into the future?
Yeah. So um, I don't know that there really is much of a connection, honestly. And the question keeps coming up in a different form or similar form, which is Bitcoin a hedge against inflation? And my standing here is very firmly no, it is not. And that's at odds with most Bitcoin zealots that you'd meet off the shelf. But it's too volatile to be a hedge against inflation. A hedge against inflation is something that a hedge in general is something that balances out, right? Is something that if you have a buy order and a sell order at the same time for the same amount of money, you're gonna, your money's not going to move. It'll stay stable, and that's what a hedge is. Therefore, you can't hedge something. you can't hedge inflation, which is 7%, with an asset that's liable to move 7% in a single day, right?
But
No,
it depends on the time frame, no?
no, it doesn't.
No.
Yeah, the time frame is 7% in a year versus 7% in a day. One doesn't cancel the other out, not in any way,
Well,
shape, or form.
if you have inflation of 7% CPI on yearly basis, and then you
Sure,
have Bitcoin going up 200% on a yearly basis on average,
that's not a hedge. It's obtuse. It's not a hedge at all. A hedge is when you have
it's quite eye opening.
a
This approach.
hedge would be if you found a bond that yields 7% annually, right? Then you would have a hedge because they're similar, right? There's similar movements. 200% doesn't hedge 7%. It's just it doesn't work that way. Um, I'm not gonna. But the bright side is what I want to tell you is that calling Bitcoin an inflation hedge is basically underselling Bitcoin and its properties, right? So obviously, as we know, it's a good idea to buy and hodl Bitcoin as part of any kind of investment portfolio. Uh, Even though it is considered a high risk asset, right? It's not, bonds are considered a low risk asset, even though I would put them in a lot bigger risk, due to central bank manipulation. I believe that they're about to take away their funding mechanism because bondholders are not quite happy with the situation being as such that 7% inflation and the best yields that you can get by lending your money to the government is more like 2%, so that they understand that they're losing 5% on their money at least on an annual basis. uh, and I believe that DeFi comes as a perfect solution where market rates are not manipulated by any central party like a central bank, but rather you're going to get the natural rate of the market, the free market, the rate of the free market, which is closer to 10 or 12%, similar to where it was when you would in the 80s, for example, or 90s. If you were thinking about locking your money for any period of time, you'd be talking about 12, 13, 14% interest. And that's what a natural market rate of interest is for locking your money over time. And the DeFi market offers that. And right now, bonds make up nearly 40% of all capital invested. So you can already tell where this is going. Maybe they don't trust DeFi at the moment because they don't understand it. But they're smart people, and these are people that are at the top of the pay scale across the world, not because they're nice people, but because they're very very savvy, and they'll understand that getting somebody to audit a smart contract is not nearly as expensive as losing 5% of your money a year. And we'll get them there. I'd like to personally facilitate about 1% of that migration from the bond market into the DeFi market. After that, I think I can hang my hat.
And speaking of taking some of the government money and the central banks, before we jump into to my next topic, when do you think we're going to see central banks allocating into Bitcoin or any other currency, crypto related?
Russia is imminent. Again, I had that bet. I have to check it up. I believe it was 1,000 Doge, but that was before Doge spiked to $1. So it was like Doge was like micro pennies at the time. I think the total value of the bet is probably like $3 when we did it. But then we valued it in Doge, so now it's going to be a lot more than that. But I believe that for Russia to come and declare Bitcoin as legal tender, it's only a matter of time after that before they start adding it to their balance sheets. It's
And what kind
literally.
of allocation do you think we're talking about then? I mean, we're talking about Russia, right? It's not Tanzania or Botswana or El Salvador. This is a major world player on the geopolitical stage with huge natural resources and massive foreign exchange,
Well,
reserves.
let me
How
give
much are
you
they
a hint.
allocated?
Yeah, let me give you a hint. So, um, if we can take, and obviously past performance doesn't indicate future results. We don't know what, but history does tend to repeat itself. And we know that Russia was a major player in gold's great run up, right? From what was some, 500, $600 per ounce, all the way to $2,000 per ounce in the wake of the financial crisis, when when the central banks first turned on the printer, they first, began quantitative easing. People were like, "Hey, wait a second, this is going to cause inflation," and then they went and they bought gold, and that was the play for, for my first few years as an insider in financial markets, as somebody who's working for various online brokers. The play was for years, from 2009 until 2011, everybody was buying gold. And Russia was a huge part of that, right? They were, there was basically an arms race between the central bankers. And that's the fun part about this, is that once Russia does it, is only, it's only a matter of probably weeks before we start seeing other central banks go, wait a second, there's only 21 million. Let's do the math over here. And then figure out that, the paper on their balance sheets is actually worthless because they're creating it themselves, and the Bitcoin actually has a value. Therefore, you're trading something that's essentially worthless for something that's of value, and that happens. That has a tendency to continue. The cycle gets more and more ferocious, crescendoing until something bad happens.
Yeah, and I can definitely see a scenario where the Kremlin decides to put it on the balance sheet, and then you have countries, former Soviet Union countries that are now independent in their own way, going the same route. And countries like Venezuela, that also has very close ties to Russia and the Kremlin and Moscow, clearly can do the same. Uh, and yeah, like you say, there is only 21 million that will ever be in existence, but there's only 18.9 million out on the market currently, and most of it are held by long-term holders, including all. Hopefully, I hope that all has a few BTC in cold storage.
Yeah.
היי, מה קורה? כל טוב. Okay. Um, Traditional markets versus the crypto market. For you, who've been in so deeply embedded into both, right? It's quite a unique perspective because most of the people who were in traditional markets are still in traditional markets, but you have completely pivoted, right? And you've become one of the strongest and most vocal crypto advocates in the entire world, most likely. What do you see as the most distinctive differences, and what makes you so utterly excited and committed to digital assets over traditional markets?
Oh boy, yeah, that's a great question. Uh, well, I mean, obviously the hours are more flexible, and the there's the small differences, right? But the big difference is custody, or fractionalization. I mean, that's this is a small difference. The big difference is custody, that you have the ability to own and hold your own financial assets. And that's never been possible in the history of the universe. And it's already leading to some very interesting market dynamics, like NFTs, for example, which, 10 years after the invention of Bitcoin, all of a sudden we're seeing situations where, somebody's going to pay more money for a digital yacht as an NFT than an actual physical boat, right? And that can only happen uh, in a digital space where the market is both liquid and illiquid at the same time, and everybody suddenly has access to place a bid on any item that they so choose, and therefore the highest bidder is always going to win, especially when there isn't that type of liquidity of people constantly buying and selling, as there is with fungible assets. Um, we're going to see more and more of those type of anomalies. Um, but I've known for a very long time that now that the cat is out of the bag and we have the ability to create digital assets, um, the entire market will migrate from traditional assets into digital assets, and that's going to happen in stages. Obviously, today we see that more and more companies opt to start out natively digital. But eventually, even the traditional players will have to move over to a decentralized model. One second.
Yeah, sure, no problem. Um, One of the things that are fascinating, guys, thinking of all the son of Mati is also, and my daughter, who is less than 2 years old, is the future of our children and their relationship um, to digital assets, to GameFi, to play to earn games like Devikins that just launched an open beta right now. You can check it out, of course. That's soon migrating to Klever chain, by the way. So it's very exciting times. And how do we educate our children to relate to cryptocurrencies, to the fiat system, and ownership on the digital scale? And I was just talking, Maddie, about how children like Or and my daughter, uh, how do we teach them about digital assets? How do we teach them about GameFi? And how do we make them have a healthy relationship to not only um, the screen, which is clearly taking over their lives, but also to the monetary value that comes through the interaction with that screen? GameFi being, of course, and play to earn, which I know you're absolutely crazy about, being one of the prime examples of that. What do you think?
Yeah, so it's interesting because my oldest daughter, she's 8 now, and that means she was born around the same time that I got into Bitcoin. Um, I like there's a book called Bitcoin is Money by the Bitcoin rabbi, who I'm also close personal friends with, which explains it very well. And my daughter had a lot of takeaways from that book. You can now ask her what is Bitcoin and why is it better than paper money, and she'll give you a passable answer for sure. Um,
And do
but
you think it was thanks to the book by the Bitcoin rabbi that she
Oh yeah,
can
yeah,
she
yeah,
can
yeah. I
articulate
mean,
that?
yeah, because I haven't sat down and talked to her about. I mean, sure, she's gonna, sponge some stuff up from meetings and stuff like that. But it was really that book that kind of put things into place for her as far as what is money and how do we look at it and what's superior, because it really goes through the stages of why is paper money better than metal, and then what are the pitfalls of paper money that they started, the kids in the town started printing their own money and trying to pass it off as counterfeit, and you really kind of get it. She really understood that really hammered it home for her. But more recently, during the NFT craze, it's become kind of like a family event. I won't buy an NFT before I show it to my kids, right? And go, hey, what do you guys think about this one,
You guys
right?
like this one?
Yeah, and in a lot of ways, I mean, they're kind of like my taste makers for this type of thing. If they're going, going crazy about something, um, chances are that has a, a better appeal, something that I might not pick up on, myself. And we've done several mintings together, and they get excited with me, like when we do a mint, and
See what you
and
get.
yeah, And I think that is the way, because children are much more technologically advanced than we are. And you're I see you're nodding. Yeah, it because anybody with children already understands that um, they're growing up with this stuff, right? They're growing up with the device in their hand. Um, so it's not difficult to explain to them, the value of an NFT, for example, right? They get it. I don't even have to explain it. They get it that it has value, and the fact that I'm looking at it and talking to them about the value of it. Um, they don't need any more explanation than that. They're just it's just very natural that something on the internet, on the electronics, you can own it, you don't own it, and what does that mean?
It's fascinating. I also thought a lot about how our children and growing up in this generation right now are so in tune with the screen and with the iPad and everything else that happens around them that their way of communication is utterly different than the way that we grew up. And we have to not adapt, we have to just have complete empathy and understanding that not only the communication will be different for them growing up, but also the communication of value. And like you say, for children, it's very easy to understand what an NFT is. They completely understand that you can own it or you can not own it. You can mint it or not mint it, and they can have rarity or not. And it's absolutely mind-boggling to think that for children this is completely given, while for most adults they still don't understand the
There's
value
a
of
learning
NFTs.
curve, sure. Yeah, I agree. And I was privileged enough to grow up in a house with computers and Nintendos and fairly uh, my parents are both into kind of digital marketing and network administration and stuff like that. So but a lot of people out there today, I mean, their first computer probably wasn't until mid to late 90s at least, right? And for kids, I mean, they're growing up with it already. I mean, these devices are already um, my son gets upset if he's not multitasking. For example, he needs to have Spotify on and YouTube on at the same time so he can listen to his rock and roll and watch his trash shows at the same time. And if they're not both on, he'll start getting upset at me. Um, like he needs, and I can't hear, like one thing at a time. But he'll open three or four songs at once, and he's completely happy with that.
And he's
Uh,
completely content, yeah, because it's completely different age, and they've been able to grow up with this kind of multitasking, with where the attention span spans out. Let's say
yeah.
it's not focused, and we'll see what that has in store for our children. Maddie, um, I would love to continue this discussion, but I guess we'll do it another time. Or seems to really want to go to bed. We're
That's it.
close to an hour in, anyways. But next time, let's touch a little bit. 2 weeks ago, we had Lunar Crush, of course, over here. Joe and John,
Oh,
great
awesome.
close partners and friends of ours, and I know you're an advisor there. Next time, let's tap into a little bit more uh, on that front and many other
Yeah, we'll talk
topics.
about GameFi and supremacy as well. I've just signed on as an advisor. I believe that also, is a path to teaching my children, because it's kind of a game where the player takes a less active role. So I've got my four monitors set up. I just put it on one of the monitors, and my kids can play along with me while I'm doing other things and working. So I think as they release that, I'm sure we'll have a lot more to explore there.
Fantastic. Well, Maddie and or Greenspan, thank you so much to both of you for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure. And until next time, we'll meet. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in, whether you're watching live or after the fact. And until next time,
Thanks a lot.
always, always stay hungry and be clever.